introduce myself. So I guess everybody has already figured out that I'm Vanessa Abron. A lot of people came here to support me. But I really do hope that you guys, I really did curate this experience because back in 2017, I started an event. It was called Prelude to Pitch, and it was an opportunity to introduce music artists to public relations. I started that conversation because I too am an artist, and I'm also a public relations professional, and wanted to share with my fellow musicians and artists just sort of the little things that I've picked up about public relations, also noting that artists specifically don't have the budget to necessarily always hire a public relations professional. You got the opportunity to work with brands like McDonald's and Axe and things like that and be at the Chicago Bulls game. How are you able to leverage that? Was it social media? Was it a relationship? Was it a combination of both? And what was that like for you?
It's all for me, it's been all relationships. I'll be on the new Undisputed boxing game that's coming out when it comes out. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that yet, but whatever.
Did you sign NDA?
No.
Okay, you're good.
Yeah. So anyway, and it's all about the relationships. What has that been, and how have I leveraged it for myself? Is like a good friend of mine, Frank Lewis, Ramsey Lewis' son, is a good friend of mine, and
he was on the 2018 panel, by the way.
Good, right? Good guy. Great, amazing guy that works with the city, has done we've done a lot of cool stuff. Shout out to Frank and his son, Junior. But the thing is, when you have those relationships where people can trust in your brand because they know you, and if you show up in places and you build that relationship, I mean, Chicago music scene is real small when you get to the people that are for real about it. It's a very small amount of studios that we go to, and if you haven't been in those studios, you don't have some of those similar engineers, and you come with a music that's subpar, Chicago points the finger and be like, see, you gotta go over here, you gotta go over there. So the relationships have to be real, and the work has to be real. And that work in Chicago, I think being in Chicago is different from New York. It's not LA, it's not New York, it's not Atlanta. Chicago is all relationships. And LA is like, not this LA, but it's Hollywood. So you can get a lot done, and it's like just kind of fickle. It's like just for the moment, if you show up. Chicago is more the authenticity, like you were saying earlier. So if you have those relationships, they want to find out for real they're gonna ask. We'll talk about like, oh, who is that person? Is he any good? We keep it real to a certain extent, a lot more than a lot of different cities. And so I think those relationships, you just keep piling them on. To be honest with you, I don't have a resume where I go and be like, these are all the things. I've been doing music since I was 12. Like No ID was my first producer. I've been like, I can name drop I can keep name drop all day, right? But I don't even build a resume on what I've done. It's about who I am when I'm in the building, and it's about the music that I have. I guarantee you, when you hear it sonically, it's gonna fulfill a void that you have. And you had that conversation with the brands, I can give you something that you don't have. Authentic music that moves the audience. And they'll give it a chance, and they'll believe in your story if you're real.
I saw Bianca, those were definitely some gems. Bianca was definitely nodding her head. Definitely want to get your perspective. And marketers, I got something for you based upon some of the things that was dropped. But Bianca, have you had the opportunity to work with brands, or how have you been able to leverage your music brand outside of music?
I've worked with brands, just leveraging my music with them is, I know you say don't name drop, like he doesn't name drop, but sometimes I've learned that sometimes you have to, in a room of people that everyone knows each other and they don't know you kind of have to be on that, because just from my experience, sometimes they overlook you, or you won't get that opportunity again. Just as an example, I was backstage with like Thundercat and No Name. I think they had a show, and he's like, hey, yeah, you know, you do music? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not really, you know, here for that. That was the worst decision I've ever made. Well, one of the worst regrets that I have, because he was giving me an ear there. And by the time the show was over, you know, having to build that relationship and get back into it, it was kind of harder, you know, since he wasn't right there. So, I mean, I've worked with the brands, and the biggest thing for me is making sure that they have something that they want to show their brand with. So if I'm doing a video, like I don't know if any of you, the Stolen Liquor brand, and then what was it, 1800. I haven't drank in a while. 1800 tequila. They were looking for someone to market their brand, you know, via videos, and then they had like a collaboration album that they were doing, but they sought me out because I also gave my pitch to them. So I don't know if I answered your question. I pitched it because my cousin is very organized and I'm not.
So your cousin pitched it for you?
Yes.
Okay.
I just told him everything that I wanted to say, and then he helped him.
So what I hear is that you leveraged a partner that had a skill set that you didn't have to help you on your journey. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, because no one can do it alone, especially someone that gets distracted from a fly like myself.
Marketers, entrepreneurs, I have a question for you. So these people just really talked about relationships and being in their room. How can people develop relationships with you so that they can stay top of mind? So when you're working with a brand on a particular thing, you like, you know what, I think so-and-so, I just met this person at this event at Guitars Over Guns. I think I want to consider this person for this particular project. You can go first, Mr. Ross, since you have the mic.
One thing I could say that the gentleman here was just pointing out, like city to city, market to market, business is different. Like that's a fact. You know, I'm born and raised here. I own my venues on South Beach in Miami. I've consulted for venues here in Chicago, New York, LA. I've consulted in LA. We have clients on the West Coast. Worked with a company in New York for a few years. Like I can absolutely say what he said is 100% correct. Where you are is very much so going to set the tone for how business gets done to a certain extent. There's a very different vibration to how things happen in different cities. And I just think that's very important for people to understand, because what's different now is that you might be from Chicago, but that don't mean you have to work here. Like you can really build yourself outside of this city to the point where you can come home and people don't know what you do, but you go someplace else and you are a star. Like I got a bunch of people that I can name off that's really where you all know them from, is really where these other cities made them names. It didn't happen here. And for a long time, the knock on Chicago was, even when those offices were here, were that you had to leave Chicago to get on. And then once you're on, Chicago will put you on another level of your pedestal. And that was a fact. And there are very few artists that that's not true for. So there is an element to having less than 6 degrees of separation that exists here in Chicago, especially in the industry, that doesn't exist in other cities. Most other cities, it is a 5 or 6 degree of separation between people. Not in Chicago, it's 1 degree. Most of the time, most people, especially if they've been around, they could pick up their phone and text one person and verify and validate everything that just came out your mouth real quick. So it's different. When it comes to what I can say is impactful in any market that I've worked in, and for all the brands that we represent and the various markets that are their home market, is the element of consistency in your follow-up. Regardless of how that is, if you're an Instagram person and you're on Instagram 22 out of 24 hours a day, you should be DMing people all the time. If you're on your computer all day, you should be emailing those people that you met all the time. There is no such thing as too much follow-up. And that is probably the biggest differentiator that we've seen between the brands that we end up working with is that we have before we send the email to invite them to the meeting that we're going to discuss actually representing their brand or taking their brand on to distribute it or introducing them to a bigger distributor because we think they actually have something that's worth taking to that table. The first thing that we look at before we do that internally on our team is how often did they get back to us on time.
So I have to piggyback off of that because as a public relations professional, Christine and I have worked together. That's like our job. Like 10% of our job, well, I'm fudging the numbers here, but like there's a small percent of our job where it's like you put together the materials, you make it look nice, you make it look pretty, you do you do the proofreading. Okay, this looks great. And then you send it off. I would say the rest of it is follow-up. And then you don't just follow up, you gotta follow up in different ways. You gotta change the subject line. Well, maybe they didn't answer your email because that subject line didn't appeal to them. So you gotta change the subject line, maybe it wasn't a good day, so you gotta try again. And even though this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, I have to say this. Sometimes, even if they're not responding, they're still paying attention to the fact that you're following up. Like they may not say, oh, I got your email, but they may be looking at it. And sometimes they're looking just to see like, okay, they're doing this right now. I'm not gonna do anything right now, but okay, they're doing this right now. Not gonna say anything, but we're gonna do it. So, not related, but related. When I started in public relations, I went to a PR networking event, right? Met a bunch of people in PR, Hill & Knowlton, Weber Shandwick, Edelman, all those places. If you don't know what they are, they're like big public relations agencies. And so I remember I met this one woman, she was vice president at Hill & Knowlton. And she gave me her card. And right after I left that event, I got an internship with Weber Shandwick. And then I didn't get a job after Weber Shandwick. But while I was at Weber Shandwick, I was still emailing this woman. She never responded. I just kept emailing her anyway, like, hey, I'm doing this. Yeah, I learned how to do this, blah, blah, blah. And she might have responded like one time, oh, that's great, thanks for letting me know. I'm like, okay, whatever. So, but I just kept emailing her. So then I didn't get the job at Weber Shandwick. I'm trying to find the next gig, right? And I remember you're in that, you're in that like in between where you like don't know what's gonna happen. So I'm in my room, 20 something years old, like, oh no, literally crying. Then I get a phone ring. The phone, it actually rung back then. And ring, and so I answer it. It's like, oh, this is Hill & Knowlton. We'd like to bring you in for an interview. I was like, oh, okay. I did not apply for a job at Hill & Knowlton, but I was looking for a job, didn't ask questions. So I took the interview and I said, I'll figure this out later. So after I got the job, I was like, so how did you guys like find me? They was like, oh, Veronica, the lady I was emailing, she forwarded your resume to us and said we should consider you. Wow. Never responded to it, maybe like I said, one time. Out of 10 emails, she responded one time. So follow-up is key.
I co-sign everything with relationships. Like in my world, the talent managers I want to work with are the ones that I enjoy working with. Like some people think it's like this crazy like science, and I'm like, really? I just like working with my friends. Like I want to work with people that I know are like fair when they're redlining a contract, when they're open to having a briefing call, when I'm able to talk to the talent directly and not going through a million like red tape. I also know the people I don't like to work with. Like I don't like to like publicly say that, but I do have a list of people like I do not enjoy working with, just for the way that they do business. So relationships are huge. And the only other thing I'd say about follow-up is somebody that gets pitched all day long. Now, I used to be on the PR side, so I totally understand your side. But now that I'm on the brand side and influencers want to work with us because we're paying them money to work with us, follow-up is important, but it's also like strategic follow-up. Like I am gonna disagree a little bit with the like there's never too much. Like there is too much, trust me, there's too much. But I think if it's thoughtfully done, if it's coming from a genuine place, if it's not like, hey, what are you working on? Hey, I get so many, hey, what are you working on emails a day? And I'm just like, why do I need to tell you what I'm working on? Like that's putting it back in my, making it more of a burden for me. It's really like, here's what I'm doing, how can I help elevate the brand? But also to your point and to everyone that said the follow-up thing, like if I always say like have a Google Doc and write the names down of the people that you think you can symbiotically help. How can you help them? How can they help you? And check in with that list because you'll forget. That's another thing about these events is like you go to these events and then they sort of pop out of your head. Mark down the people that you think that can help you from in-person events, if it's, you know, a master class you saw online, whatever it is, and then do like quarterly check-ins. I think that's a really like good approach. But I do agree with the ethos that a lot of people, you know, kind of like think it's just gonna happen for them. And like in both of your two stories, it did just happen. The universe did kind of come through, but you guys did a lot of work to get that point. And I think we, especially with the younger generation, like I feel like there's a lot of like, if I just hope for it, but you have to do the work. I mean, as an old lady up here, like you, that came from kind of like before the social media era, like there was a lot of grinding and hustle. And I know in this room we all know that, but you have to like accept that. And then the manifesting in the universe will come through. I just went on a really big tangent, I'm sorry.
No, so actually to follow up with Katie, so even though I said I followed with her, this lady 10 times, definitely wasn't 10 times within 10 days. It was over like a period of like 5 months, you know, that I'm following up her. And then like you said, I'm following up with like tangible things. Like, hey, I just learned this, you know, this might be something that, a skill set that you might be interested in knowing that I have in case an opportunity, you know, like it will be, like you said, it has to be meaningful follow-up. And that actually goes back to like social media too, but I'm gonna pivot just a little bit, just a little bit. Because with social media, I think of social media as what we call owned content. Do you guys know what the word owned content means? Yes. Okay, for those who don't know what owned content is, it's content that you own, like that you have ownership of, you have control over it, and that's in your social media is part of it. And another part of that could be like your email distribution list, e-letters, and things like that. And I bring that up too because the follow-up that you can do that's a little bit passive is if you have permission and you have an email distribution list, say, hey, is it okay if I add you to my e-list? And if they say yes, then when they're getting their e-list, that's also you following up. Because now they're seeing these are the updates that you have. You have to get permission though first. Don't just put someone on the e-list without their permission. And as a PR person, by having certain clients on their e-list, we've gotten coverage by not pitching because they just saw, hey, we see on your e-list that you're doing X, Y, Z. We want to cover that. You know, can we come out to that? It's like, oh yeah, sure. Like I didn't think that was something you would be interested in, but sure. So take those relationships, find out, I say that because take those relationships, find unique ways to engage with them beyond just, hey, you know, like maybe you want to be on the email list. Maybe it's like, hey, I got a concert coming up. I have 2 free tickets. You know, I would like to bring you backstage, you know, for the VIP experience, you know, maybe, you know, things like that. Anytime I got free stuff, I would always invite people that I wanted to develop a relationship with, you know, when I would have free stuff. Like, oh, I got tickets to go see Hamilton. Do you want to go see Hamilton with me? And they're like, oh, yes, I've been trying to get tickets. Well, great, I got tickets to go see Hamilton. And then now you have them in an intimate scenario where you can now develop a personable relationship beyond just what you're saying. And you can do that. If you know if they love coffee, hey, you know, I'm in the area, coffee on me, let's go sit down. You know, or hey, wine after work, let's go grab a glass of Chardonnay. You know, like find like meaningful ways to connect outside of being just the taker. But I can't remember who said this too. It's not just about coming out, but I also wanted to make sure that the point of, someone said you have to make sure you give something back. So someone's always saying like, oh, I want to work with Nike, I want to work with Nike. Okay, great. Why should Nike want to work with you? So exercise in there in my book, Prelude to Pitch, if you want to get it, that helps you flesh that out. Because Nike, if you can tell Nike why it's beneficial for them to work with you, then now you have their ear. Well, I know I look like this, but my audience has this, and they all wear Nike, and if I do this Nike giveaway and da-da-da-da-da, it would make sense. So that's just my little takeaway too. Okay, any questions from the audience? I want to make sure you guys are engaged. Anyone lost, confused, questions? Yes, Adriana.
I guess my question was for you, because you said strategic follow-up. Can you elaborate more on what you mean by that?
I mean, Vanessa just like talked about that. Oh, sorry. Vanessa was just mentioning that too, but just not the like, kind of like, I like to use the word lazy, sort of like, how are you? How's it going? You know, it's more like, I love what you said about like, I just learned this really cool new thing about, you know, how like advertising on TikTok and this hack or something, you know, like this might be something that's like relevant to you. I love the idea of asking them to be on your newsletter. Maybe you did a podcast, you want to share a podcast episode. Like there's so many ways to, that's the stuff that I appreciate, because you took the time to think of like, how is this gonna like affect her? Is she gonna learn something from it? And with my brands too, like, you know, I work on like big, mostly like food and bev brands, but like, this is kind of a dumb example, but right now I'm actually working with Daisy from The Bachelor. She was on the last season of The Bachelor. And the reason we started this relationship, it really was nothing to do with her, but Daisy Cottage Cheese is one of my clients. And at the end of an episode of The Bachelor, it like showed Daisy's face and then instantly went to the Daisy commercial. And it was sort of like a strategic media buy. But like that would have been a perfect time for her to reach, we actually ended up reaching out to her. But that's just an example of like, that would have been a perfect time for her to reach out to like the agency and be like, hey, my face was just like right before this really like perfect commercial sequence. Like that's a really strategic time to reach out to a brand. But yeah, I think it's just more than just like the, hey, what are you working on? Just drives me nuts.
That's not follow-up.
Right, that's true.
Like, yeah, the definition of follow-up from a business standpoint.
Hold on, Christopher, we haven't do the mic.
Sorry, I'm so used to
It's okay.
speaking out loud. So the definition of follow-up from a business standpoint is that you are replying back with credible, reasonable information to share. To share. You have to have something to share. That's why you're following up. Following up is not, I'm just following up to see if you got my email. It's 2024. You don't have to check to see if they got your email.
They got it.
They got it. And if they didn't get it, you got a notification that told you they didn't get it because the domain failed. We consult 35% of our clients are in IT. I can talk to this on an IT level. They got a reply back that said, this is why your email didn't go through. So that's not follow-up. Follow-up is when you are sharing something, you are providing a reasonable amount of information, short, concise, delivered to the recipient that connects to why the recipient even wants to talk to you. If you're not doing that, you're not following up in the first place. Because that's what the point of relaying this part of this volley in communication is about. So when I've stated follow-up, I should have stated it in a more direct and intelligent way. I apologize if I misled anyone to think.
You did it, you
that's
did
what
it. This
was.
is, we're having a discussion, it unfolds,
It's
it
definitely
unfolds.
important that those are the key elements of what your follow-up is. And you should know what that is because you are the person that's been studying who you're communicating with. If you haven't put the time in, as she was just saying, it's a hustle to it, which requires you to put some grind behind it. So did you know who you're reaching out to? How much information do you have on that company, on that individual? That's the work that you have to put into it. And the work is so much easier to do now because of social media. You could be on somebody's Facebook page for 5 minutes and know everything that you need to put in an email that's going to get them to respond back to you. It's not rocket science like it used to be.
It's not rocket science, this is what it is. It's time consuming. And people are, sorry, I hate to say it out loud, people are being lazy sometimes. And so yes, I remember a friend was like, sometimes it does take me an hour to put together an email because I'm trying to structure it right, I'm trying to make sure I have the right information. I want to put the hyperlinks in there so I can reference what I'm talking about. Yes, it's time consuming. Any last notes that you want to leave people with? Any shameless plugs on how people can follow you and engage with you beyond this? Or how can people hire you if they have some money and a budget?
I'll go first since I got the mic, and then I'll be done talking for the night. So yes, my shameless plug is my new EP is coming out. It's called Just Verse. It's a culmination of the different versions of me, Z verse, gentle verse, which is more Caribbean, Afrobeat, and rap and all of that. So this is, I'm excited about this project. It's coming out on the 1st and 15th in 30 Tigers, and it's gonna be really. I mean, this the best shit in Chicago. Like lyrically, your boy ain't, they can't. I don't know, ain't nobody seeing me, But it's a great project. I mean, it's really like to set the precedent of what music should be and what it should look like. So go follow me on social media right now, verse_zverse, and I'll follow you back and invite you out, give you free T-shirts and free non-alcoholic beer.
I don't know about y'all, my T-shirt.
Yeah, and non-alcoholic beer and all of that good stuff. And that's pretty much it. And the sky's the limit. And we'll see y'all at the top. Yeah, that's my real name. Thank you for saying it like that.
All right, you gonna go left or right? Christopher, it's on you.
First off, everybody, thank you guys for coming out. It's always good to be able to get in front of people who want to do better and trying to do better and trying to make moves and being able to share information with individuals. Information share is key to building a business, whether that's in entertainment or anything else. So my shameless plug will be Teak Group Corporation is our company, so that is teacgroupcorporation.com. Admin at teacgroupcorporation.com. Our entire team gets that email. So my wife is the CEO, I'm the COO, our CMO, everybody gets that email. So somebody will get back to you. We will follow back up because, again, we know what real follow-up looks like and it's important to do so. What I would like to say in regards to your journey is that finding your community is going to be key. So that's like what Verse was just saying for the young man and his father and what they're looking to do with his career. But finding your community is going to be key. You have to have people who you're around that are similar in nature. And what I mean by that is that the desire to be better than they are today, tomorrow, is heir apparent. The desire to do something with their time that is more than just about making money is heir apparent. You have to be in the place with people who are also moving in the same direction because energy is momentum based. You cannot move without energy, and energy continues to move by momentum. So if you want to have your career to continue to advance, you must keep momentum. And in order to do that, it's typically because you're in a community. Because everybody's not going to be hot at the same time. Everybody's not going to pop at the same time. Everybody's not going to get an opportunity at the same time. But if you're tight enough in your community, the ripple effect will show. And you can see that in any anthology that you go look up. If you look at their success and you look farther enough back, you'll find other success. And you'll find other success, and you'll find other success. Because success is connected in that way. So keep moving forward, keep the momentum behind you, keep the energy high, keep your positivity rate high. That means keep the people around you in a number that are more positive than not. And that will have a dramatic impact on not just your business, but your life in general.
Bianca.
Some great words, you too. I would say just to make sure that you create your own narrative. If you don't, there'll be other people that tell you who you are, and then you're gonna be sitting back like, dang, how you gonna tell me that I don't do this and I do this every day? You have to let the people know. Let them know. Speak up at the table if it's something that you don't like or something that doesn't sit well with you. Make sure that you say it in front of your team, not the one-on-ones. Everybody needs to hear that. If you have a group of people that you have together, make sure you delegate who's doing what. You're gonna be the videographer, you're going to make sure the notes are taken, you're doing this. Because what happens is you get that one person who says, oh, I can do this, I can do that. And then they're burnt out and they blame you for all the work that they're doing. It's like, I didn't ask you to do that. So, you just have to take the lead, be the driver. Like, you are the captain of your ship. And don't let people tell you that, oh, because you're a woman or because you have kids or because you have locks or whatever it is that they say, you can't do it because of these reasons. You have to make sure that you show them otherwise. Somebody wise once told me that the greatest basketball player never made it to the NBA. And you have to put in the work. That's it. Just put in the work and you'll get far, you'll succeed. I mean, it's just consistency. I need to take my own advice because I'm not consistent. I also hate social media. That they will troll you, and you have to have alligator skin if you want to be anywhere in this industry. Like I'm not even deep in the water like, Cardi B and Diddy, oops, not him. Jay-Z, cut that out. But I mean, I'm not even that far yet. But it's already, people will, if they see that you're verified, they will try to get you to lose that verification badge and your profile. They'll go to your page and think of very mean, nasty things to say to you, and you have to not respond to that, because I've made the mistake of responding and going there because I had time that day. So I went and I said things about them, and next thing you know, they're like, if you do this again, you're in violation of losing your page. So I just let them talk, because when you think about it, you know, they probably just jealous of what you're doing, what you have. They talking about you from the couch, and you just went to tour, or you just on television. They might just want to push your buttons. So I would say that is a dark side, having so much of your personal life shared. And they can talk about your baby, they can talk about, you know, your body type. And, you know, you just have to be confident in who you are and stay true to yourself, you know.
How did you get through that? As someone that had to go through that and went there because you had time that day, how did you recover? Because it didn't just stop. You know, you got the message like, hey, if you do this, your account is going to be taken away, it's going to be shut down. So how, as human beings, you know, our feelings get hurt. Like we're regular people, you know, behind the screen. How do you manage that as Bianca?
I just, like I said, it's the alligator skin for me. Not everyone has it.
She's a Leo.
I am, sorry. Well, what does that mean? But for me, I mean, I grew up on the west side. That's all we did was talk about each other.
That's right.
We're from Chicago. Like, you gotta be able to take that. They dish it out, you be able to take it. And you can do it in a subtle way too. Say something really smooth so that your account don't get taken away. Like how what was that, Mayor Green? What did they do?
Oh, no, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna say, no. I know what you're talking about. Does everyone know what you're talking about? Okay.
Just being subtle with the approach, I'm saying. Because she was kind of subtle with it in her, not, all right.
Verse, have you experienced the dark side of social media at any point in time?
Yeah, so I hate social media. I really do.
Be real, that's
I hate it. You know, I come from, like, because I was doing music so young, and being from the west side of Chicago, right? And so one of the first things, I have a jewelry fetish. And so I wear a lot of jewelry, you know. I don't have any on now, but I, like, you know, I'm pretty heavy on the jewelry. It's just been a thing of mine. It's not even like, it's deep, right? It's just deep. It's not even like to show off. It's just what I feel like it's my comfort place.
Have you gotten a jewelry brand deal yet?
No, but
I think that's something you should look into after today's conversation.
I've done stuff with, like, like everybody knows me on Jewelers Row, so like I've done stuff with them, and you know, over the years, since I was like 18, we've done stuff together. And that jewelry deal for me has looked like pretty big discounts, and I've been able to facilitate, because I work for the big, like outside of, we spoke earlier, what I have to do outside of music is marketing. And so I've done marketing for the Chicago Bears, which is the Greater Northern companies. And so I'm the guy that took us from Reebok to Nike. And so my relationships in the music business and the entertainment scene, I was able to take those like lunch parties and like all the stuff that we did and leverage those relationships with players. And what does a lot of NFL players want? Jewelry. And so, you know, a lot of them came to me, you know, hook them up with Rolexes and stuff like that. So, like you said, it's all just relationships and being in a position to use those relationships and not just being so corporate, like being a person, like I'm cool. Everybody knows, like, oh, it's Verse, he's cool as hell, you know what I mean? And I'm like that same guy, even in the corporate setting or in when I'm in those companies, I let them know I'm a lot different than the average person. And then that goes to like, oh, what do you do? Like, you know, like, what do you do? You like, oh, y'all rap, and then like, oh, you rap, that's crazy. And so, anyway, to get to the dark side of the social media thing is, with me being so heavy on that, I've always been very cautious about what I post when I post. I usually post stuff when I'm gone, never post like when I'm there. And so that's a part of being smart about it. And even on like, if it's nobody there to rob you, it's weird people. So like, when me and Lupe, we were on our second tour, I think, together. And what we would do is, like, sometimes we'll go places in the city, we'll be there, and we want to have fun because we've been touring, and for the last month or two or whatever, we're on the road, and we might want to go somewhere and have fun. And you never know who shows up in those places, and they want to get close to you, and you know, it's for good or for bad, it could just turn into something that gets a little weird. So for me, I just try to, like, you know, I'm not Lupe in the sense of his public notoriety and his following, but I'm a student of the game. So like, when I was in LA, I was with Suge Knight at one point at Death Row, and at one point I was at Bad Boy, I was at Atlantic, you know, so I've seen how the big boys do it, you know what I mean? And I've always moved like a big boy. And so I think the social media, you have to think like not who you are at this moment. You have to think and act like the person that you want to be. And that person that you're aspiring to be, like, people don't come as, like, the businesses and brands are not into, they're into capitalizing it. They're not going to tell you what dress to put on and what hat to put on to make you look good to the audience. They want to say, hey, this works for your audience. We want to capitalize on it. It works. And so knowing that for yourself, moving like somebody that's a star, a celebrity, and having those important, the way you move in this industry, it goes a long way to keeping that, you know, those social media nightmares to a minimum.
Question, yeah, Adrian.
Yeah, sorry. This isn't really related to music, but I know there's a couple of like food beverage marketers and you're a distributor. With the sober movement being a trend now, do you feel a sense of responsibility to drink culture, especially because you work really closely with alcohol brands and things like that? What is your kind of take on that?
So I work with a lot of restaurants and bars where cocktails are at a core of what they do, and being, first of all, the sober curious, I don't want to call it a trend because I don't think it's a trend, I think it's a lifestyle. I think acknowledging that this is happening, that this is something that's really important to people, is what it has been a large part of our conversations for over a year now, because it started really in 24? It's really started in 2022. And what they're doing is they're starting to create larger, more complex, spirit-free menus. And we're also bringing in products that are spirit-free. So there are a lot of canned mocktails out there now. There are a lot of mixers that people are bringing in to create, spirit-free drinks. It being a part of that is important, but it's also not going to completely change what they're doing with their program. So it really kind of depends on the type of client you're looking for. So for restaurants like that I work with that are smaller and independent owned, that have spirits and cocktails at the core of what they're doing, they're integrating more spirit-free options into what they're offering their customers, and it's becoming a larger part of the conversation with them and also with media. And then for larger venues, what they're doing is kind of the same thing but on a larger scale. Does that answer what you were looking for? And I know that you guys might want to talk about that.
I can do it really quick because I don't have that much to say. I work with Corona, Fireball, Pacifico, Constellation brands, and your question is great because I think it's a really important point. But what I will say is it's scary for the big alcohol companies because they're dumping even more marketing. Like, we're doing so much stuff right now. Like, most of my clients in the agency world are dumping money into influencers and social media. So I think there's some fear there. I don't know as much about kind of the
Christopher has some thoughts, especially coming from the
from
club.
recently starting a distribution company. Our distribution company is 3 years old, but my wife and I have consulted in the beverage space she's 17 years and I'm 15 years this year, right? So I can speak to this a little bit differently. It's somewhat a trend from how it's being handled now with how media is using itself, or how it's used in media to represent what they're doing with these products, right? That's what makes it a trend. But this is something that's happened this is a cycle. So this is what we define as a business cycle. In this cycle, it looks like this, but it's looked and had variations of this before. One of the products that I think a lot of sitcoms made a joke about is Zima, right? So if you go and Google Zima, Zima was a non-beer beer, right? That was a seltzer, that was a not seltzer. Like, that was one of the first big products that came out on a large scale distribution that was supposed to be counter to what was going on in the alcohol beverage industry. You can't find Zima on a single shelf today.
I think I heard about that on Seinfeld. Did he talk about it on Seinfeld?
Well, I wasn't going to name drop the actual sitcom because they're live streaming and they're not paying me for it.
My bad. I'm sorry.
That is the sitcom that made a very big joke about it. It made a social media meme about it for a few years. Like, it really does happen. But from a distribution company standpoint, as she was saying, on the consulting side, our phone has been ringing like crazy because they are worried. It's absolutely a problem because what they realize is that they missed a whole time period to connect to a generation that was so different than the two generations before.
Yeah.
So that's what they're panicking about, is the fact that it was a lot of people that fell asleep at the wheel because the checks were coming in, money was good, and nobody was looking at who these kids were because they hated what they represented. And now they have good jobs, and now they spend real money, and now they're trying to figure out how to get their money. So from a large corporation standpoint, that problem is exactly what you're seeing. It's real. On the distribution company side, distribution companies that have made it, and when I'm talking about made it, they make it through the cycles, they make it because they broaden their catalogs. So Maji Pure Water is the first water that we brought into our catalog, right? It's a non-alcoholic beverage. This is the definition of what non-alcoholic is, right? Water. We realized that in order to go out and get new accounts, you have to be able to speak to what they're hearing, right? They have customers that are coming in and asking for things. They're asking for diversification and things, from who the product is made by, to what the product is made with, to what happens to that product after it's used, right? You have conversations now that are taking place that never took place from a business standpoint. And it's basically because of this last generation that's come of age now. So yeah, there is a problem there, and there is things that are being done to try to stomp it out from becoming a true element of business cycle. And there's a lot going on that is happening to try to monetize the opportunity because they realized how much did not get monetized before. And from an artist standpoint, those are the opportunities that you all are looking for. Like, that's where you can sink your teeth in, show credibility to what you could bring to the table, what do you offer, what do you represent that you could help a brand or an entity do better with. And that's where your real meat and potatoes is gonna come from. And your art is gonna be able to follow that for decades to come.
Anyone can answer this because all of you talked about partnerships. And from your perspective, can someone speak to just the art of storytelling, right? And how to present yourself, whether as an individual or entity, but just can someone speak to just the art of storytelling?
Storytelling as it relates to like pitching yourself to a brand.
Yes.
I think a part of storytelling, so like I'll give you a recent example. I was just in Atlanta at Jack Daniel's event, and they have this thing called The Verse. And of course my name is Verse. And so I was like, so I pull up and it's like this big rave, and it's like thousands, I don't know, maybe hundreds, whatever, maybe a couple thousand people. It's crazy, right? And all the other Jack Daniel events that I've been to, none of them have been that big. And so when I go in, I tell the guy at the front who I am, and we start having a conversation. He says, okay, I'm gonna take you into the VIP to meet with the other people or whatever. So I always go and mix around and do a thing. I see The Verse, start having a conversation with them about it. I say, hey, who's in charge of this? He says, oh, this is whatever somebody's name is. And so I said, oh, this is so dope. I need to know more about it. And I got the guy's name. I called to, I'm not gonna say her name, but somebody in Chicago that I know that does PR. And then she says, you know what, that's C. Nicole's account. That's her name, C. Nicole. That's C. Nicole's account. And I'm like, that's crazy, man. C. Nicole, old friends, she knows me, we used to do PR together. Not do PR together, she used to do PR for me, years ago. And so I call her up, I say, hey, what's going on? She said, absolutely, that's my account first. Yo, that would make perfect sense. So again, like, and we haven't brought this whole situation to fruition yet with Jack Daniels, but it makes sense and we've got the ball rolling. And so the art of the story is, like they said a little bit, like how does the brand benefit from me? Well, I begin to say what I'm doing now. Like, hey, you know, we just reloaded. I got Audible Treats, which is doing my marketing and PR at the moment, and we're about to take off. And I got the EP about to come out called Just Verse, and this is what I'm about to do. We're about to sink some money into it, and it makes sense. And it's an easier win for Jack Daniels because as we start sinking money into this album and this big entity, which is Audible Treats, 30 Tigers and First and 15 Records, as that grows, now we're able to cross promote with Jack Daniels, and it's just a win-win. So it's like nothing off of their back and everything to gain. So even though she's a friend of mine, I still kind of give her, hey, you know, my music is really like this ain't no drill music, that music people love. I'm selling myself to her. I'm reminding her of who I am and the music and what this particular EP is going to represent. Not like what I did last week. I don't care about that. I don't care about how many other brands. I don't care. This is what I'm doing right now today, and this is why it works for us, and it makes sense for us to do business and work with each other.
I got a story, and it's actually very close to home. So a couple of years ago, I was working with a brand, and it's actually public knowledge, so I can say it. It was very favorable. So a couple of years ago, I was working with a brand. I was working with National Geographic, and we was working on this particular project that came out. It was called Into the Depths. It was like this audio project that they came out with, and we were looking for an influencer. And automatically, I put Add2's name on the list. And for those of you guys who don't know, Add2 is the executive director of the Chicago office of Guitars Over Guns here. And so, known Add2 for years, and it was just, and I know immediately it didn't make sense because it's like Add2 does music, this is Into the Depth, you know, this is a National Geographic project, but something, I trust my intuition. Something was like, put Add2's name on the list. So I put his name on the list along with the, what's the word I want to say? The typical, you know, influencers that they may go out for. And one thing that's made Add2 stand out with the brand and with me was that usually when you reach out to a typical influencer is that they say, oh, well, what's your budget? Well, what, you know, well, I can do this, this is how much I charge for stories, this is how much I charge for reels, this is how much I charge for a static post, X, Y, and Z. Add2, his response was, well, I don't know if this is the right project for me. And I was like, well, why would you say that? He said, because like this whole like number stories, number reels, like I don't feel, if I'm gonna do this, I wanna tell this story another way. When he said that, I already knew he was the guy. I said, okay, well, how do you wanna tell this story? He said, well, I got all these mentees, and they have a voice, and actually they connect with this story, and I'm trying to even give them some experience on how to work with brands and things like that. And I was like, well, Add2, that's great, but I don't have a budget to pay you and all of these mentees. He said, it's fine, whatever budget you have for me, I'm just gonna give it to my mentees. So basically, with the price of what I was gonna get at Add2, I got Add2 and then some. And then they all like listened to the program and had like these very unique stories that connected to that particular project. It wasn't some, hey, check out this new project that came out with National Geographic. You can now check it out on this brand, da 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 da, which is, you know, it's like, it's what I consider the follow-up, the cold follow-up that means absolutely nothing. And so a lot of influencers, that's how they show up. They show up like, okay, well, what do you want me to say? How many posts do you want me to do? Like they said, like, no, this, I was like, well, tell me what you want to do and let me submit it to the brand. So he said, this is what I want to do. I submitted to the brand. They said, let's go. Not only was that a big hit, like they, to this day, use Add2 to come out for different panel discussions and things that they're doing for National Geographic, all from that one project. So that was like the art of like taking like an opportunity and not just saying, oh, well, what do you do? Because I only put together that structure because I know most influencers want that. And I'm like, oh, how much will it look like if you did like 3 stories, 2 static posts, and 4 reels? I really don't want that. I'm just trying to gauge them. But the ones who always respond with, I'd rather do something different, we always go with that person. Always go with